Before we begin, viewers are advised that the following content is intended solely for educational and entertainment purposes. What follows is the verbatim courtroom testimony from the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press.
Ray J and Puffy definitely were lovers. Puffy allegedly gave him $10 million to an album. They never put one song of two brothers loving each other, whatever it's supposed to be.
You just said, you just said that Diddy and Reggie were lovers. Is that what you said? Ray J.
I said Ray J and Puffy was lovers. Yeah.
Was that well known?
Reporting on comments made by Sean Diddy Combs' longtime rival, Suge Knight.
Right. And what makes this, particularly compelling is that Knight's currently incarcerated. He's speaking out from prison about Diddy's very high-profile federal sex trafficking trial.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive only into this specific People report. It draws from interviews Knight gave to ABC News and CNN. Our goal here is really to pull out the key insights, understand, precisely what he's saying from his situation about this whole thing.
Yeah, get that perspective he's offering. And just to set the scene a bit, Suge Knight, co-founder of Death Row Records, he's serving a long sentence, 28 years in California. That's from pleading no contest to voluntary manslaughter back in 2018, tied to a 2015 hit and run. So he's inside, but suddenly his voice is part of this Combs trial conversation.
And here's where it gets, really interesting. Despite being behind bars, Knight's name has apparently come up a lot during Combs' trial. The source we're looking at specifically notes he was mentioned at least 50 times. That's according to the ABC News reporting cited in the People article.
Wow, 50 times.
Yeah, and they even mentioned one specific instance in court where Combs supposedly went to confront Knight at an LA diner.
And that's, it seems, precisely why Knight's decided to speak out now from prison. According to this report, he's giving his viewpoint on the very serious allegations Combs is facing. Sex trafficking, racketeering, transportation for prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important we remember, as the source points out, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all of it.
Absolutely crucial context. Okay, so let's dive into what Knight actually said to ABC News and CNN based on this report. One of the first big points seems to be about accountability, but maybe wider than just Combs. What was his take there?
Well, yeah, talking to ABC News, he didn't really hold back. He basically argued that if Combs is going to be held accountable for these allegations, leveraging careers for sexual favors, then the focus shouldn't just stop with him. His view, as reported, is, and I quote, "make everyone answer."
Make everyone answer. That sounds like he sees it as maybe a bigger systemic issue in the industry, not just, one person's actions.
That seems to be the implication, yes.
Okay, so moving from that wider point back to Combs specifically, what did Knight suggest about Combs actually participating in his own trial?
This is another pretty notable comment reported. Knight apparently believes it would be, quote, a great thing if they would, quote, let Puffy tell his truth. He's actually saying Combs should take the stand, testify in his own defense.
That's quite a suggestion, isn't it? Especially coming from a known rival, someone with his own legal past. Did he elaborate on why he thinks that's a good idea? Like, what might happen if Combs does testify? He talked to CNN about that, right?
He did, went into some detail there, according to the article. Knight sort of games it out. He suggested that if Combs got up there and admitted things like, hey, I did all the drugs, I wasn't in control of my life at the time, or myself, Knight's thinking is that by humanizing his old self like that, he, quote, really would walk, meaning potentially acquitted.
Walk. Wow.
Yeah, Knight's take is that the jury might give him a shot if they hear that kind of narrative and, acknowledging past struggles.
So he's basically outlining a potential defense strategy, focusing on admitting past issues, addiction maybe, lack of control, suggesting that could actually work with a jury.
That seems to be his perspective, yes. That it could resonate, maybe lead to a better outcome on some charges anyway.
Okay. But while he's advocating for testimony, the source also says Knight does acknowledge that Combs, quote, did terrible things. He's not excusing everything.
No, not according to this reporting. He doesn't seem to dismiss the seriousness of the alleged actions. He was quoted telling ABC, "Don't get me wrong, he did terrible things." But then, right after that, he offered this interpretation of why. He argued that Combs, quote, just didn't come up with those stuff and those ideas on his own. He suggested Combs repeats what he's seen and learned.
Seen and learned. So kind of a learned behavior argument. That's a fascinating and maybe controversial angle, suggesting the alleged actions might be patterns he picked up somewhere else. Maybe in the industry itself.
That's the suggestion, yeah. Framing it potentially as replicating observed behavior.
And even though he acknowledges the terrible things and, he's obviously incarcerated himself, Knight seems to argue against just throwing away the key for Combs.
Yes, that's what the report indicates. He told ABC News, quote, "I don't feel that they should take Puffy and lock him up and throw away the key." He actually thinks Combs, quote, "can do so much good right now, him telling the truth about the industry."
So even from prison, Knight sees some kind of potential value in Combs speaking out about the industry's problems, maybe, instead of just maximum punishment.
Exactly. Sees potential for him to have some sort of positive impact by exposing truths rather than just disappearing into the system.
Interesting. Now, maybe one of the most unexpected parts of this whole report is Knight expressing some kind of sympathy for Combs, given their history.
Yeah, that definitely stood out. The report says Knight told the outlet he actually felt sympathy for Combs. And his reasoning was, he said, "I feel the people in Combs' life, going on his journey growing up, they failed him."
Wow. They failed him. That adds a really surprising layer, doesn't it?
It does, suggesting maybe some of Combs' issues or alleged actions could stem from a lack of support or guidance early on.
Oh.
That's Knight's perspective anyway.
That's not what you'd automatically expect from a longtime rival. And he even connected it to his own experience in prison. Made it personal.
He did, according to the report, drew a very direct line, stated he's, quote, "been there sitting in those cells." And because of that, he knows Combs, quote, "feels that he don't have a friend in the world," speaking from his own firsthand knowledge of that isolation.
Right, projecting that feeling onto Combs's current situation. That adds a kind of a poignant human touch, strangely enough.
It does.
However, the source also notes Knight was very clear about drawing a line, a distinction between his own legal situation and what Combs is accused of.
Oh, absolutely. He was apparently quite emphatic about that with ABC News. Stated directly, quote, "First thing I would tell Combs is this: I'm not going through what he's going through for his freak-offs."
His freak-offs, okay.
Yeah, that phrase freak-offs, the source mentions it was part of the discussion, though it doesn't detail exactly what it refers to in the trial context. But the point seems to be Knight clearly distancing his own case from the specific nature of the allegations against Combs.
Got it. So while there's commentary on accountability, even some sympathy, he's definitely separating himself from the type of alleged actions Combs is facing.
Precisely. It's a really multifaceted perspective he's offering based on this report. Coming from his unique position, inside prison, you've got the call for broader industry accountability, the specific advice for Combs to testify, this interpretation of learned behavior, the argument against a life sentence, that unexpected sympathy, and then the clear line drawn about the allegations themselves.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does it all mean? We've taken this deep dive only into this specific People magazine report. It covered Suge Knight's interviews with ABC News and CNN. We focused just on the comments attributed to him there. We understand the context. He's incarcerated. His name came up in the trial, so he's speaking out.
Right. And we've walked through his key points, as reported. That call for wider accountability, his somewhat controversial view that Combs should testify and how it might play out, his perspective on learned behavior, arguing against throwing away the key, that surprising note of sympathy based on his own experience.
And finally, him clearly separating his situation from the specific nature of the Combs allegations, using that term freak-offs.
Exactly. We've stuck just to what this single source relayed about Knight's perspective from his current circumstances.
His name getting pulled into the trial seems to be the trigger for him weighing in, and these are the points he reportedly chose to emphasize. So it leaves you with a pretty interesting question to think about. What does it really mean when someone like Suge Knight, speaking from prison with his own serious legal history, offers this kind of perspective, talking about accountability for others, suggesting learned behavior as a factor in alleged actions, and even adding that touch of sympathy rooted in his own tough experience? It's definitely something to mull over as these legal proceedings unfold, keeping in mind this is all based only on the specific points Suge Knight shared, according to this one report.